Good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Finale, and this is Real Estate Talk TGIF. 335 episodes and 331 weeks in a row. Every week I'm honored to have the people on that join this broadcast, whether they're local realtors, national figures, and local realtors in and of themselves. And today is no different with Greg Harrelson, who is the owner and founder at Century 21, the Harrelson Group in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Greg, you and I met a number of years ago at Century 21 convention. And, I've watched what you've done and been really excited about, your steadiness, your consistency, your disciplines, so thank you so much for being on the broadcast today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me back.
Oh yeah. It's been a long time. It was 89. So that's about 5 years ago. Yeah. So here we are, we're getting started. And before we get started, we need to go to the video. So hit it, Nelson. Real estate agents, are you looking to acquire clients consistently to grow your business and income for a great lifestyle? Well, this is Dave Finale, and I'm here to bring you the Real Estate Skill Builder broadcast, Real Estate Talk TGIF, brought to you by Real Estate Skill Builder and the Modern Agent team. And we're back. Hello, everybody. Again, Dave Finale here, Real Estate Talk TGIF number 335. And I always start with understanding where my guests' journey has started. But before we do that, I have a question for you. Don't know if you're going to remember the answer, but I'm going to ask it of you anyway. What does TGIF stand for?
You asking me?
I am asking you there, Greg.
Because it's Friday, I'm thinking it's thank goodness it's Friday, but I have a feeling it might not be. But let's see what the right answer is.
And when I first named this, 335 episodes ago, I did not know this was going to come out this way, but I figured I could show up every Friday and do this. I have for 331 weeks in a row, but thank God it's finale. Here I am.
Finale, there you go.
Finale, here we are.
I think that's even better.
Exactly. That's what I thought. And we had Kyler Ferris on a couple of weeks ago. He says, well, it could be thank God it's Ferris. I said, you're right. It could be.
That's right.
Anyway, here we are. Greg, you've been in the business a couple of years, longer than a couple of years. I say that kiddingly. You came from somewhere, you started somewhere. A lot of people really don't go into their life saying, I'm going to be a real estate agent. I'm going to be a real estate coach. I'm going to crush it in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Tell me about your journey and the things you went through, whatever they were, to get to where you are today.
Yeah, it's interesting. The first thing that came across my mind is I don't think that I actually said, oh, I want to be a real estate professional. I think what I was saying 27 years ago, whenever that was, I think what I was saying is, I don't want to be a waiter. I don't want to be a bartender. I don't want to work in the hospitality industry. I think that's what I was actually saying. And it just, for some reason I landed on real estate and I made the best of it. And here we are now. But just from a first standpoint, like what triggered the transition, it was probably moving away from things I didn't want to, not knowing exactly what I was moving forward, what I was moving towards.
What have you seen in the years that you've been in this industry as far as how you've learned?
Well, what I've seen is very little has changed while there's so much change.
I love that.
So, gosh, when I first got into real estate, we didn't even have, we didn't have listings online. The MLS wasn't online. There was none of that. Right. And we were using what I call snail mail to list properties, or then it became faxes, and then it became emails and all this stuff. So there's been a lot of change, but the fundamentals of like getting business and building the business hasn't changed. And what's interesting is that in the midst of all this change, I'll constantly, people will tell me, hey, Greg, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I'm a little bit slow to adopt things, because what I like to do is I like other people to adopt them. And then I will monitor their business. And if I see massive growth, then I'm like, oh, okay, maybe that did attribute it. But what we usually see is people are adopting so much new, but then when I actually look at their production didn't grow. So somebody says, oh my God, this is the CRM. This is the lead source. This is the that. And then in the next year, they're still doing relatively the same amount of business. Well, if it was so good, we should have seen massive increases. So the changes that exist doesn't seem to actually impact the growth. It's the same old things that people have been doing for many, many years that seem to be impacting growth the most. So it's the old stuff that impacts growth. The new stuff, for the most part, doesn't. Some people will argue with that, but I would love to have that debate. If you ever want to do one of these and like get me and somebody that has a conflicting opinion to that, that would be very interesting. Not to disrespect each other, be probably a very interesting conversation.
I think I think what you're saying is might not even be possible simply because it's a fact, and I've always lived by this, is that what worked before is going to work until it doesn't work. And obviously there's a lot of people that have done really, really well in this business. They've built great teams, they've built great organizations, great companies. And one of the things that happens when they start having issues is they've adopted this new stuff or whatever you want to look at. And what's happened is the old stuff never stopped working. They just assimilated other things into their business and they got away from what was working. The way I've seen businesses grow is, okay, let's take a step back. What were we doing that was working that got us to where we were and what we had to do to actually keep growing and to scale? And that's what they did. So basically, that's really what you're saying is that, you know, everything still works. We're just doing it a different way. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I'm going to take it one step further. I started making some notes as you started talking. You triggered a thought, and I wanted to capture it. And that was, you know, Dave, coaches are not coaching on what's always worked anymore. And tech companies are doing a lot more coaching now, whether it be forms of webinars or whatever it is. And so many people are consuming their coaching in that fashion. And those coaches are not coaching the old techniques that have continued to work. So there's a whole new generation of agents that have never been really coached to do the things that actually have works. They've been coached to actually do the things that other people want them to do. And that is a significant disconnect and change. So there's plenty of people that we would say, we could argue that, yeah, they got distracted. No, there's plenty of people in the industry today that have never done it. And so it's not that they've been distracted, they've never been introduced to it. And Dave, there is that category that do know, but have been distracted. So I just wanted to throw that out there because there's not a lot of old school coaches out there still coaching it.
Okay, so there's two things here, right? There's two things here. One is the coaching. And there's three things. I'm going to introduce a new one. One is the coaching. Two is time. And what I mean by that is you had 2008, and before that, people weren't doing things. And then after that, they didn't know what the hell to do because, you know, they didn't have to be an order taker anymore. Same thing happened 2020 now.
Yeah.
But there's also, and you correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of brokerages out there that are still doing things the way they did them 20 years ago. Doesn't that have to change as well? Or doesn't it have to stay the same? And what I mean by that is when we talk about coaches not coaching to what they should be or what they did years ago, it's like we've gotten to an abyss when it comes to some brokerages, and we've gotten to an abyss where the coach wants to be on the cutting edge. Is that where we're at now? And they've forgotten that, okay, let's put it this way. It took me 100 calls to make 20 contacts to get 4 conversations to get 1 appointment. Yes. Even though we never talked about that 30 years ago, we should have been. And it's really what we did. We just never talked about it as much. I know I just said a whole lot of stuff, so hit me with what you think. Yeah.
So, a couple things. I mean, a lot of people that are coming into the business, they're coming in with the expectation that they can get to the top very fast. So right. So there's unrealistic expectations for those that are coming into the business, but they're coming into the business and there's plenty of shiny objects that are actually affirming and confirming that that's possible. And so they're going to those things so fast that they're never building the fundamentals of just, look, there's never a closing that takes place that didn't originate from a contact. So the reality is the old adage that, real estate's a contact sport still applies.
Absolutely.
It's just a matter of like, what's the most efficient, effective way of generating contacts? And people have said, well, the most efficient way is to let somebody else do it. But the most effective way is to do it yourself. Right. So people are seeking ease and sacrificing effectiveness. And then they're trying to figure out what in the world's going on. But then as a coach, like me, as a coach, it's not popular to actually say, oh, no, you really need to do it this way. You need to show up. You need to actually make contacts every day. You need to talk to 30 people a day, take 3 hours a day, do it again in the afternoon. Oh, no, that's not, you don't have to do that anymore. So it's not popular. So coaches cannot sell their coaching because the old stuff doesn't sell. No one's buying the old message, even though the old message is what the top producers are doing. The new producers are not buying the old message. So the coaches decided, well, I'm going to have to start selling something different or else I'll be out of business. So they sell a different message based on what somebody will buy. Now, not all coaches. Look, I'm not negative on coaching. It sure did sound like it, but that wasn't my point. It's getting misdirected at this moment.
No, and the way I took it, Greg, is really simple. It's like, okay, the old stuff still works. And the coaches of a while ago are just to stay at the speed that they want to be at and to show their value superficially or not superficially, but on the surface, 2 different words, so they can build their business, continue to make their money, continue to turn out what they turn out. Let's face it. I mean, I think there's a lot of coaching companies out there, a lot of coaches out there that I think their systems are broken. And the reason their systems are broken is because they have not stayed with the same thing. You have. Our friend John Cheplack has. I go to John's events for the last 15 years, Greg. And I know he said, I went to a sales course with him beginning of the year. And he called me out and he says, Dave, how long you know me? I said, 15, 16 years. He says, has my message changed in that time? And I said, absolutely not. John has not changed anything. Nope. And it makes it what it really does is it really pushes me along to what I've learned is I got to be better at relationships, right? That's what I've learned at. And what worked 15 years ago, 30 years ago still works today. And look, there's a lot of shiny objects out there, AI being one of them. If you're not using AI, I get it. If you are using it and it's working, great. But if you're using it to the advantage of making the contacts and making the calls, that makes a hell of a lot of sense, right? But we still know that we need to know our business and know what we're talking about to show our value. And that's been the big phrase since the last year was, okay, so now we need to show value, right? So going from making the contacts to showing the value, one of the things I spoke with you the other day, and I said a couple of things I saw on some posts that you made, and this one really hit home with me, and it's so true, and I've always thought about this. Rookies want to handle objections when they get them. Pros handle them in advance, okay? Yes. Mm-hmm. This is what's not being taught today. There's still shit out there, which I always thought was a mistake, where people say, let's have an objection handling session. Let's not have an objection handling session. Let's talk about questions that need to be asked. Yeah. What are your thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, if we're like a simple question that everyone should ask before they go on an appointment, let's say it's a seller or you can, or even if it's a buyer, is just like, hey, I'm just kind of curious, Dave, when I come out and we start talking, I'm just wondering, what are you looking for in an agent that you're going to choose? I need to start understanding what are they looking for. And then, they may say, they're probably going to say something like, well, I just want somebody that's going to sell it. I said, well, look, if you talk to 5 real estate agents, I can't imagine that any one real estate agent would tell you they couldn't sell it. So they're all going to say that. So besides that, like, how are you going to know when you're talking with the right agent? Well, I'm going to want somebody that, markets the property. I'm going to want somebody that communicates well. I'm going to want something that blank. So when you get the answers, then you know now to go ahead and build that conversation into your
Right.
presentation. Because if you don't build that conversation into the presentation, then it's going to pop up as an objection. So if I ask the proper questions prior to go and meeting somebody, and I understand what they're looking for in the agent that they're going to hire, I can alter and adjust my presentation and eliminate majority of the conversations. Now, this or objections. It's the same thing comes with price. People say, "Oh, Greg, no one will tell me price," and I say, "Look, you got to ask everybody, what price are you hoping to get?" Now, people will tell you all the time, agents, that, well, every time I ask that question, I get the answer, well, you're a real estate agent, so I'm kind of hoping that you'll tell me, or I don't know, I'll just let you tell me. And every agent tells me in the beginning, they never tell them. And it's not because of the words that you're using in the question, it's because of the tonality and the inflection of the question. So it's like, Dave, hey, I'm just kind of curious. I mean, what are you hoping to get for the property? And when I use that curious and use an upswing and whatnot, I get the answer nearly every time. So once I know that, if it's high, if it's low, I don't change my price. I change the way that I present price, which will prevent me from getting an objection.
Right. So, and everything you're talking about and the script you just used, Greg, take a guess. How long do you think? I don't know the answer to the question. How long has that already been in print? How long have those questions been around?
I mean, I started when I began.
Yeah.
I mean, this is old stuff.
Yeah. That's my point. This is old stuff. And what you're doing is what 95% of agents do not do after they get an appointment is you're qualifying it to get the information of what they're really concerned about.
Yeah,
right?
It's a two-step process. Like when you go to the doctor, you don't walk in, sit in the room and the doctor talk to the doctor first. You talk to the nurse first. And the nurse's job is to be an information gatherer. It's the doctor's job to be an information giver. And that's how the process is. When we're setting the appointment, we should be the information gatherer. We should be gathering this information. Tomorrow, when we go on the appointment, that's when we can be the information giver. But if a doctor started giving you information before he started gathering information, you would walk out. If the doctor says, "Okay, take your clothes off, I'm going to open up your heart." Whoa! You haven't even asked me any questions, doctor. How do you know it's my heart? We got to be information gatherers. And then information givers.
Right. And I've always said the seller, the buyer is going to hire the agent, not the one that tells them the most, but ones that asks the most, ones that actually goes after, the question, has a conversation with them, knows a little bit more about them. Look, our lives are I believe they've changed over the past 50 years. And what I mean by that is, before it was, okay, what's the price? What's it going to do? Like a car. Like if you look at a car from 45, 50 years ago, and I know I'm dating myself, but I don't care. If you go back that far, you look at the car, I mean, some cars, the question was, do you want air conditioning or not? Did you want a radio or not? That's how simple it was way back when, and I'll say in the 70s, okay? But today it's like, okay, well, it's got so many different things. You don't have to ask any questions. When I go buy a car now, it's just like, okay, let's go, because I really can't ask all those questions. There's just too many things there, right? But when it comes to a buyer, when it comes to a seller, those questions still have to be asked. You need to know if they've got the radio or they don't have the radio, or is it FM or is it AM or whatever. Man, that's really dating myself, and I know that, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So when we look at what agents need to do, when we look at how to build up a business, there's a lot of ways to start and there's a lot of ways to keep going. What do you see as different things that our industry, our professionals should be doing to build their business or to get back to their business?
Yeah, talk to more people on a daily basis. Any problem a real estate agent has, it's like, let's just say you come to me, it's like, and you're an agent in one of my offices, and you come to me and say, "Man, I'm just not setting enough appointments." Sounds like a contact problem to me. "Man, Greg, I'm just not making enough money." Sounds like a contact problem to me. man, I don't have enough money to actually buy a new house. Sounds like a contact problem to me. And so we have changed. Like maybe there's not as much outbound prospecting going on today because there's more inbound lead services that we can actually get them to, whether it's a Zillow or a whatever, sold.com or whoever you go to for leads,
Right.
you
Right.
know, all of those
Mhm.
services are there. But you know what the biggest problem with those services?
What's
People
that?
aren't calling them before the leads. Before the services existed, you know what the problem was? People were not making contacts. So
So
before we had lead companies, the problem with people's productions, they weren't making enough contacts. Now that we have lead companies out there that we can get the leads from, the problem with the leads is we're not making enough contacts. Anybody who generates leads through online lead portals that gives them a team or whatnot, every team, every brokerage, and every lead company is complaining that the agent receiving the leads are not making the contacts. Before these lead companies existed, people were complaining that agents were not making the contacts. So why don't we just solve the problem that's always existed that we actually control? And that's just start talking to more people every day.
And like you said, there are businesses and companies out there that will help us make those contacts. And of course, now there's AI voice and all that fun stuff. But I know that, one of the things that's important no matter what is we're seeing that take the lead, and we're seeing it take the lead because what is it doing? It's contacting people more, right? And people, you know what? I see an issue and I see a correlation between people not wanting to make the contacts and people not answering phones. So,
Yeah.
as you and I have been teaching and coaching and training for years and years about picking up the phone, calling your SOI, FSBOs, expireds, etc. The one thing that is true is that for sell by owners and expireds aren't picking up the phone as much. What's the alternative? Is there an alternative or you just keep doing it?
Well, typically the people that are saying that they're not picking up the phone enough, they haven't actually called a large enough sampling to actually determine if that's true. Now, I will admit that's true, okay? Because because we could just use common sense. It's like, well, when there were no cell phones, then obviously more people talked on their home phone. Okay, so there's just some logic to it, right? But
Yes.
what it comes down to is that a higher percentage of the people that we're reaching now, or even attempting to reach, are hand raisers. And those people do pick up the phone more often as long as we get them fast, as long as we have that speed to lead concept in play. The problem with people not answering the phone is when there's too much time goes by between capture and first attempt. And that's the problem. See, we talk about speed to lead. You get a lead right now. I get a lead right now and I call it right now. Well, when I'm calling that lead, if I call them in the first minute, then it's highly probable that they're still on the computer doing whatever they were doing, searching real estate. But if I wait 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's highly likely that they've gotten up from the computer or are no longer in that app on their phone, and they're tending to something unrelated to real estate. So after 5 minutes, you're an interruption. In the first 5 minutes, you're assisting them with something that they're currently doing. So
Right.
because of speed to lead, and we're not getting speed to lead right, then after that 5 minutes, it's ridiculous to get them on the phone. I admit that. But the solution is speed to lead.
Yeah, and if anybody wants a really good example of what speed to lead really means, go online and put your information in a car dealership, and you let me know how long it takes them for your phone to ring, because it will ring within 30 seconds. There's absolutely no question, because I've tested that for personal for looking for a car, and I said, why the heck did I put my information in? But I
Yeah.
did. And, it's like, why do we do it? But okay, so let me ask you this question. So if you get a list of, let's go back to the seller part of it, right? So if you get a list of 10 to 15 for sale by owners, most of them aren't answering the phone. Are you finding that in your area? Because we find that up here on the East Coast of New Jersey.
Um, no, I don't agree. I don't agree
Okay.
in my area. And if that is true, though, in any area, then they're never going to sell. If a for sale owner never answers, if it's true that a for sale owner never answers the phone, then they'll never talk to a buyer. So hot dog. So you know what? Now I'm thinking about it. I might pray tonight that all for sale owners in my market never answer the phone again, because that means all for sale owners will never sell. So then let's just go knock on their door then.
Could that have something to do with getting back to the buyer thing with a lead call of speed to lead, speed to when they come on the market? Or do for sale by owners need time and they just stop answering the phone after they put the sign on the lawn?
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I do think you should reach a for sale owner as soon as they go on the market. Now, how you approach them could be a different. You're not going to
Sure.
approach them like an expired, because they're not that motivated to get right onto the market. But I do believe that if the sooner you can establish rapport with the for sale owner, the sooner you can get rapport within the process, then you're definitely going to have them picking up the phone and talking to you as long as you have rapport. But again, most of this conversation, in my experience with agents, is the more we talk about this, the more we convince ourselves that there's no reason you should call them. And then there's other agents that are calling them every single day, and they're getting a certain percentage of them on the phone,
Right.
and they're getting a certain number of appointments, a certain number of listings. And when we look at the return on the time, it's better than anything else somebody else could be doing.
I'm going to tell you, the metrics haven't changed for 20 years or 30 years. The metrics haven't changed. People, you'll get people to transact. The first call 2% of the time, the second call 3%, 2%, 5%, but everything happens. 5 to 12 to 16 to 20 calls that you've got to either talk to somebody or make an attempt. That metric has not changed, and I don't think it ever will, no matter how we're communicating in the future or how we're going to communicate today or tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, with AI, which it's interesting about AI, because now that's just going to be the next thing that convinces a real estate agent they don't ever have to make a call. And I just want to this will just be my little warning. Sometimes I'll throw out these warnings and say,
Please.
hey, look, put this in your calendar and let's see what happens in 2 years, because see if Greg had any if this was nonsense or not. But if a company or an agent, if AI gets so good that the AI first of all, a lead company can generate the lead for the agent. The AI company can call the lead and set the appointment for the agent. At that point that they start setting, the AI sets the appointments, at that point is exactly when real estate agents should be afraid.
That's right.
Because that's the point where companies are going to be able to invest millions of dollars and just go hire the W-2 employees at $25,000 an hour, train them to do one function only, which is to go to the house and do a presentation. They can start charging a really low fee and then just give the W-2 employee not a kickback, a bonus for any listing contract signed. They would be licensed, but there's plenty of agents that'll work off of a salary.
Right.
So all of a sudden, there won't be as many real estate agents needed when that's the case. So we got to be careful here. Now, look, I'm not anti-tech. Like, I'll use AI, but just for those agents out there that are going to really say, okay, I'm going to go all in on this, and I'm not going to make calls. Just understand, all in means the more the technology can take away from the agent, the less the agent is needed. And if we don't think that there's not going to be a button right after the AI sets an appointment, a button or an option for somebody to just click and for $799, go ahead and get your property on the MLS, no hassle. I mean, how could that not be the next step? How can it not be the next step? So what's the agent going to be needed for?
Well, I do not believe that the agent will ever be replaced, because it's just
Not all of them.
What's that? Not all of them, right?
Not all of them, yeah.
I do believe that as this gets more fine-tuned and having to show value, I mean, Greg, let's face it. I mean, in 2005 and in 2020 and 21, we just had to go up and we got to check. You had to be, I'm sorry, a glorified doorman.
Yeah.
You opened the door. Okay, how much you want to offer? You did the paperwork. You guided them a little bit through it. You hooked them up with a loan officer. You made sure they had an attorney, at least in New Jersey. That's what we have to do. That was it. Now, as things change, things get better. I mean, you did a post recently about what agents should be doing. They should be, measuring their activities, being more consistent, showing up, right?
Yeah.
I want to go back to episode 89, which you were on the last time, almost, I guess, about 5 years ago. And I have used this since you said this that day. And I always use your name. I always preface it with this. What my friend Greg Harrelson said is the biggest problem that we have in our industry with agents and them not succeeding is they're not prepared. Okay. You said that on the broadcast way back when. I didn't have to listen to it or go to it. I've used it. Is that still the case?
Yes, I absolutely think, I was talking to somebody the other day and I was, we're watching NFL football right now, right? Because it's football season.
Right.
And I was talking to somebody and I said, look, in football, all we see is about an hour and 45-minute game on Sunday.
Right. Yeah.
But what we don't see is the 6.5 days of preparation,
right,
that they did to perform in that game. In real estate, it's the same thing. People are going to appointments, whether it be buyer or seller appointments, but there's very little preparation leading up to those appointments.
That's right.
I mean, today, still, as a matter of fact, I'm going to a listing appointment today. And I've got this, you remember what that is? I mean, because most people don't know what that is anymore. Yellow notepad. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Boy, we're both showing our age now. I didn't have a driver's license in the 70s, Dave, but we both have yellow notepads, right? On this yellow notepad. Now, I've already prepared for this listing presentation. And quite frankly, I have a lot of confidence in my ability to present listings.
Right.
But I promise you, 10 minutes before I go into the house, I will go to a new page on this yellow notepad, and I'm going to mentally and physically write out kind of my outline, not in detail. Foyer. Build rapport in the foyer. Do this. Sit at the kitchen table. Do this. I know it like clockwork, but I'm still going to go map it out, visualize that listing presentation. Still today, almost 30 years later, I am never going in unprepared. And that's going to show up in your conversion ratios. We got to stop winging it.
It's funny. I heard the same thing you just said with the NFL. And what they did was they went down to more of a nitty-gritty, if I may add to it.
Yeah.
It talks about the 3,000 to 4,000 hours of work they do all year long for on Sunday. It's a 60-minute game. They might only be in for 30 minutes. So think about this, offense, defense. You're going to work thousands of hours for 20 minutes, 30 minutes a week. But they're always practicing. And the practice, Greg, and you just detailed it without saying it. The practice is not only, knowing what your process is, and knowing what the numbers are, and knowing what you're going to say. It's also learning over time the market, learning the intricacies of that market, learning how outside the area affects inside the area. So there's so much learning that needs to be done and so much practice that preparedness is probably the number one thing that you will say. Now, there's a lot of other things, and being prepared, it can be a direct correlation to why you want everything too, right?
Mm.
What is your reason and how much you're going to put into it? Or is this your only source of income? That's a pretty good why, you know? Talk to me about what things, are there things that people need to get back to from over the past few years?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The one that comes to my mind is we need to get back to connecting with people, whether it be our phones, our cell phones. We are just hiding behind text. We're hiding behind emails. We're
Yep.
hiding behind workflows.
Yep.
And now what we've done is we started doing that because we didn't plan to hide. We started using all this and all these different techniques in order to be efficient. But now it's becoming inefficient because now we don't even want to connect. We're like, let's let it go to voicemail. I don't want to talk to them right now. Or just text me, or I'll just text them instead of making the call. Send this email. So we have a hard time connecting with people. And we need to get back to it because the consumer is also feeling disconnected. So if we can get back to face-to-face, belly-to-belly communication, ear-to-ear communication, that'll take us very, very far in building our business because everybody, I'm telling you, your kids, parents, spouses, friends, they've never felt more disconnected ever. Now we're bombarded with information, but the intimate connection that we've had with friendships and stuff is gone.
Yeah.
It's all electronic, and we got to get that back. And the person who gets it back shines in the eyes of their leads and their clients. They shine.
Absolutely. I mean, I believe that, over the years, text has been something that, people would rather communicate that way, or they want to communicate with email. People say email's dead. It's not. Here's the
No.
thing. What you just said, we got to get the ear to ear, face to face. And the important part about that is that everything else is a support mechanism. It's not the primary. Primary is what you and I are doing. This is face to face. Okay. So look, I know an agent that does 40, 50 deals a year on the buy side, and she does it all through her Zoom meetings, simply because it's her way of scaling. She's an individual solo agent. That's how she does her business, and it's been very good for her. It's still face-to-face, it's ear-to-ear, but she supports it with the text. She supports it with her social media. She supports it with the email and making sure that everything is flowing, and she's not hiding behind, okay, this, that, and the other thing. You talked about hiding behind text. You talk about, I'll get it later, or the phone rings, or I'll call them later. Yeah, I'm just going to go back to something else, and I'll keep dating myself. I don't care. When the phone rang when I was growing up, we ran to the phone. Who could be the first one to answer the phone? I was the youngest of 8 kids, so I had a lot of battles. And the other one was, and now it's like we hide from the phone. I mean, there's even, yeah. I mean, what's his name? Sebastian Maniscalco does a skit about how it used to be, where when someone comes to the door, you'd run to the door. Now, when someone comes to the door, you hide, right? You don't want anybody to see you in the house. And that's how the real estate business has gotten, or some of the personal businesses have gotten to, that we actually need to change. And people say, well, then there's, well, I work from home, right? There's another thing. An office isn't important to me. Well, how about getting back to the office and getting back to that thing? Does that make sense to you about the office and about all this, all that stuff? Talk to me a little bit about that stuff.
Yeah. Well, first thing, that you brought up is, and I agree with, and that is tech is an enhancement. It's not a replacement.
Right.
It's an enhancement, not a replacement. And the second thing that I thought of is something here. I don't know why my mind went back to it, but since I've been in real estate, technology there's so many changes. But let me tell you one thing that didn't change and one thing that did at the same time when we've gotten so tech heavy. Here's one that didn't change. Per person production hasn't changed.
No.
And here's what has changed. Our margins have decreased. Now, shouldn't it be the opposite? If it was working, shouldn't per person production be going up and we be making more profit? But instead, per person production, go fact check me. Per person production has not went up and profitability margins have went down. The old stuff works.
Right. Yeah. Nothing has changed in that respect. Okay, so someone might say, well, there's more realtors around today. Yeah, guess what? There's also more people around today. So that is a direct correlation, right? There's not as many homes to sell. True, but there are more homes available. I mean, there are more homes that exist today. So, okay, so how does an agent, just to change the track a little bit, how does an agent build their business? So we see a lot of agents not doing what they did the 12 months prior to the last 12 months, not doing as much business now than they did the last 12 months. We see brokerages not doing as much business. And one of the reasons that people say is, well, look, this year, it'll probably be the lowest number of sales that we've had, right? And we've all seen that, under 4 million. And we can say why and everything else, but that we don't really care about that because that's not the point. But you see some agents growing. You see some teams going crazy with growth. You see some brokerages going nuts with growth and just growing and growing. What's the difference? Where's the drop off? Why is it the haves and the haves not, that gap getting bigger?
My observation, there could be many reasons, of course, but my observation is that there's a difference in being in motion and being productive. And so there's those that are like in motion for 8 hours a day, meaning they're always busy, right? And then there's those that are working the same hours, but they're getting so much more production out of it. So I think the prioritization of time and activities, like blocking out time for high productive activities. When I look at the top producers, in my office, the ones that I'm coaching and whatnot, when I see them, it's like, gosh, man, when I look at the way their schedule works, it's not that they work more hours. It's just they get so much more out of their hour. And so, I think people need to do kind of like a little bit of an inspection on the return on their time. Like, okay, look at the activities that you're doing every day, log every activity for the next 5 days. And then ask yourself in every one of those activities, how does that directly correlate to the growth of my business? And you'll see that the majority of the activities that we'll list in a 1 week period of time will not have a direct correlation to growth. And we need to actually reconfigure that. We need to rebalance that and make sure that at least a portion of our daily activities have a direct correlation to growth, to getting business, setting appointments. And I just see people are not good at managing their time. And I'm not saying that I shouldn't say manage, because I actually don't talk about poor time management. Right. I talk about poor prioritization of their time.
Right.
We're all managing our 24 hours. We're just prioritizing it wrong. And I think that's one of the big differentiations between those that have and those that have not.
I look at that in a very similar way. I don't believe time management is actually possible, because let's face it, I mean, it doesn't stop. It keeps going. Something that we can manage, we can control, we can stop. Like, I can stop this recording. I can stop my phone. I can turn my phone off and stop it from working. I can't stop the clock from moving. Well, if the battery breaks, that's the clock, but I can't stop time, right? So, and so it's like you're saying about prioritization, and our mutual friend says choices, right? It's the choices we're making. So I look at it this way. It's not a matter of managing the time that you've got. It's a matter of optimizing it. And as you say, prioritizing it and what's most important, right?
I like that better. I like that. I like the optimization of time. Yeah, I like that.
And it's whatever works for you, whether you're going to make lists and do time. So one of the things that I've learned and I've been able to help a lot of people with is, when we talk about optimizing time, we talk about choices and stuff. A lot of people say, well, I've got all this stuff to do. I've got the kids. I've got this. I got that. I say, great. So take the anxiety out of it. Do what you have to do, but always put somewhere in your time schedule a choice to do the work that you need to do, such as lead generation, such as follow-up, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really a challenge for a lot of people, and I understand that. But if you're putting in practice, if you're putting in lead gen, if you're putting in calls, if you're putting in follow-up, if you're putting all that stuff into your calendar and making sure that you've got time for everything else, it's not a problem. Let's face it. There's 168 hours every week. And if you actually go through and monetize that, and one of the exercises that I'm actually going to do 2 days next week is I'm writing down every 15 minutes what I do, because I want to optimize my time. It's actually the guy I work with at the Align team, the CEO, Brett Sikora. One of the things that he does once a year is he'll take 48 hours and he will mark down every 15 minutes what he did. Mm-hmm. And it makes sure that he gets his time in check, right? What do you think about that? Is that something that agents should do to look back at their time?
I love it. Yeah. I think they should do an inspection. It's like a home inspection on a house. We need to do a time inspection on our, on ourselves. I agree 100% because, I don't feel like most agents are lacking the how.
Right.
I don't think a how is the problem. Like, I don't know how. I mean, everyone's answered. All the hows are answered. It really comes down to the will.
Will they do it?
Having the will to do it. It's not the how. And a lot of people blame the how. Like, I don't know how. Well, Google it. You'll have 300 answers, and you'll have some answers from some good people like that you can rely on, just free right off of the YouTube, right? So, or your podcast will talk about how many times. Every podcast you're dropping hows, right? But so the hows exist. It's the will that we need to focus on. Do I have the will to get up in the morning and do what I need to do to act and make the choices that I need to make in order to get the things I declare I want?
Look, I look at it this way as a decision. It's a decision that most agents have to make. It's a decision on making the choice to optimize what they need to do. So there's many ways of looking at it. And it's just a matter of doing the work. We can talk about the preparedness. We can talk about the practice. We can talk about, okay, so this is what we do in a listing appointment. This is what we're doing with the buyer appointment. We need to upskill every day, everything of what we're doing, because let's face it, let's look at Aaron Rodgers, right? He's 40 some years old, has been in football 20 years, and he does practice every day, right? Are you willing to do that? I mean, Look at everybody. The day of the last World Series game, which was not a good day. Everybody, they're still practicing. They're still working on it. I mean, they talked about. I'll give you an example. They talked about Aaron Judge and him working on watching the curveball come in, and he did that earlier in the day for the last World Series game. He continues to practice. To me, that's the essential part of our business. And how do you promote practice? Is there a way to promote it in a way that get people to want to do it?
Yeah, well, and it depends on who the audience is, right? So, like, if I was a team, if any of the listeners out here have teams, then I would be thinking of promotion as I'd be thinking of accountability as a form of promotion,
right?
Okay. So the smaller the audience, the more likely accountability is going to be the solution. And then the bigger the audience, it's probably going to be more inspiration, examples, and leading by example. So I'd say a small audience, it's definitely going to be accountability, and it's going to be leading by example. But a bigger audience is going to be it's a little bit tougher. So you can just share with them, share the stories, share the examples, explain to them, inspire them, motivate them, but understand that people have to want it in order to get it. It just doesn't happen just for the sake of it. So it's really tougher. But if I'm a team, and from my standpoint, I look at it from that accountability is the most effective way. And it doesn't have to be severe. It doesn't have to be negative accountability. Accountability is, hey, what are you committed to? Can I hold you accountable to that? Would you like me to hold you accountable to that? That's like setting up that type of structure in someone's environment will do very well.
No, absolutely correct. So we're coming up on time, and first of all, I want to thank you again for being on this broadcast
Very
and
welcome.
pouring out with all the information, all the knowledge, and all the nuggets you've given us today. Um, is there a path along where we move along as our systems advance and our technology and our enhancements? What's the process? Is anything changed? And what would you tell an agent that wants to improve their business that hasn't really done much over the past couple of years?
Well, if somebody's wanting to improve their business and they haven't done any much growth over the last couple of years, it's a contact problem. It's always going to be. It's just going to be the answer. I mean, I always learned that if I believe I know the answer, then give the answer and don't make up a new answer just because we think it might be more popular. I'm not trying to win a popularity contest. That's the answer. When it comes to like moving forward in technology, just remember technology is an enhancement. I have so much tech that I utilize in my operation. It's an enhancement. It's not a replacement. It complements what I've always done, which is talking to people every day the main priority. But once I talk to them every day, what I can do with them in the form of nurturing and all these things and building mind share and top of mind awareness, all these things that I can do with technology, I want to do that with them. But then as I'm seeing people engage and consume the things that I'm doing from a tech standpoint, then I still want to use that as a trigger to go old school and call them again.
Right. Right. Contact is plain and simple. One of the enhancements that helps our business is that if we use the right technology, it's going to help us with our numbers so we actually know our numbers. But there's nothing wrong with taking a piece of paper and writing a hash mark down all the time. There's nothing wrong with doing that and counting that way, because I still do that way. Greg, I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much for being on today. We're going through here some tech situation here. Anyway, thank you so much for being on today. I appreciate you being on. Next week we have Courtney Benson coming on, who is the founder and principal at Social Agent Society. You're going to have some great knowledge coming out of there. Greg, thank you so much. Please stay on as we move out. But before we end it, I got two things, and I almost forgot. Number one is, how can I help you grow your business?
That's a great question. I really, really appreciate the sincerity in you asking. Right now, I'd probably have to get back to you and give you a better answer. But right now, you're doing it right now by just giving me a platform, a place to actually, kind of share who I am and how I think. And I believe some of the things that I say will be attractive to some people, and some of the things that I said will actually not necessarily be attractive. So giving me the space like you're doing today allows me to attract the right people into my into my environment and whatnot. So I do appreciate that.
Well, man, thank you so much again, and you're welcome. Anyway, as one thing I didn't talk about earlier is, you know what? Your own one's before you got one. Now you got another one coming.
My other one's black. So yeah, make sure I get the blue one because my other one's black.
You got to stay on for a second so I can get your information. I didn't get it before, but this is great. We got the new blue ones out, and look, man, thanks again. This has been really sweet. Everybody, thanks so much. We'll see you next week on 336. Hit it, Nelson. Hey.